Strap into your seats and get ready. It's time for the Mortarpod.
Hey everybody, Alex Stevenson, Jake Faith here. Welcome to this week's episode of the Mortarpod. I'm just going to do some plugs right off the top. Go to seemsgoodmagic.com if you haven't already been to my website. It's where I post all my draft videos and where I currently have started posting my standard constructed videos too. Probably going to start looking into Modern and Legacy a little bit more over the next few months. So look forward to some of those videos. Follow us on Twitter at SeemsGoodMagic, and I update when I'm live streaming or when I put out a new video. Our stream times, Tuesdays and Thursdays, 7 p.m. Central Time, are the scheduled ones, but I mean, sometimes I do unscheduled ones, and then I always highlight it, so if you don't come exactly on time for the stream, you can always watch the replay of it later. And that's at twitch.tv/Inez27, or you can watch it from seemsgoodmagic.com too. Email me, mortarpod@seemsgoodmagic.com, and I always get those emails, so if you have any comments or suggestions for segments for the show or anything like that, I'm always receptive to them. So Jake and I did F&M this week, and we're going to do our reports on that, and then we're going to do Weird Harvest a little bit later. But why don't we start it off with Metagame Breakdown. Alright. So, Jake, do you want to start off with your Esper Control deck?
Yep. So not much changed with it. Just a couple things. My creatures are 1 Aetherling, 2 Obsidat, Ghost Council, 1 Elspeth, Planeswalkers, 1 Elspeth, 4 Jace, Architect of Thought, and lands don't matter, but I'm playing 27 of them. Spells, I have 4 Detention Sphere, 3 Azorius Charm, 1 1 Devour Flesh, 3 Dissolve, 1 Doomblade, 3 Heroes Downfall, 4 Sphinx's Revelation, 4 Supreme Verdict, and 2 Far and Away. And I guess the sideboard doesn't really matter. You can probably see it there. Anyway, for round 1, I played against a blue-white heroic deck, and I won 2-0 against that one.
So what was in the deck?
He had the Phalanx Leader and Battle-Wise Hoplite and Perimeter Captain. He had Judge's Familiar, but he didn't have any other 1-drops, and I thought he should be playing Favored Hoplite at least, because I really like that one. And I kind of think the Ordeals are really good with Heroic too, because, you know, you're already putting an extra counter on them, so you're only 1 turn away from getting it. I don't know. I thought that Ordeals were pretty, at least the white one, I think, because 10 life is so staggering to overcome if you're playing against an aggro deck.
Yeah, I think the true issue with this deck is just there's too much good removal out there right now.
Yeah.
So it's tough to want to put, you know, a bunch of permanents onto a creature right now, since there's none with like hexproof, it seems like, you know.
Yeah, but Mizium Skin is out there, you know, which works to pump your heroic, and it works as a counter spell against removal.
There's also Brave the Elements.
Yeah.
I mean, if you're doing a white heroic thing
But
with
God's Willing or whatever the one is
also generates heroic. So
yeah. I mean, there are options out there to
and Ranger's Guile too.
Yeah.
In green.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, there is.
I think that maybe it's not as good as it could be eventually, and blue-white should probably just stick to, if anything, it should be a white aggro deck that's trying to play blue for added bounce, I guess, or just tempo to out-tempo them and beat in. But I don't even know if that's necessary. Mono white seems pretty good right now by itself.
Yeah, I don't think I'm sold on the blue-white heroic deck. necessarily in the format right now. I mean, Heroes Downfall, Devour Flesh, all that stuff is just a little bit too good right now. And it's always tough making a deck with a good distribution when you want to have guys that require spells and vice versa. You know,
Yeah, that's true. It's very true.
so you get a weird distribution. It just seems like it's a pretty inconsistent deck
Yeah.
with some weaknesses. But okay, we didn't really go into depth on your list necessarily and how it fares in the meta right now. Like, what do you think about? Have you played against Mono Black with Esper Control?
Unfortunately I have not got to play that matchup yet, and I kind of dread it actually. I'm afraid that I won't be able to overcome it because I don't know why. I think it's just because my removal is I don't know. It doesn't do enough against a deck that can bring back stuff and make me lose life for bringing it back, you know?
Mm-hmm.
So even a Gray Merchant just brought on, or cast once and brought into play that way, and then I kill it, and then he brings it back with Whip. You know, I didn't gain anything from doing that. So it worries me, but luckily I haven't had to play it yet.
Well, yeah, and I mean, they're only running like one whip anyway, or
Okay.
some of them aren't even running any. So I don't know. I feel like you probably have a pretty decent match. I mean, you're main decking all the detention spheres, so you have all the answers for the pack rat for days. They never even want to really commit too much to pack rat. And then Night Veil Spectre, I mean, same deal. And you're running some Heroes Downfall and stuff, so you can take care of it.
Night Veil I'm not really that afraid of right now anyway. I haven't really been.
I think you actually have a pretty good match against Mono Black.
I'd honestly like to play it to see.
Yeah. No, I like the Esper Control list a lot. I think it's good. Obzedat's the interesting choice because I think more people are doing the Blood Baron. But
if they play, I don't know. I guess they can Heroes Downfall the Obzedat. It's because I don't own Blood Baron that I don't play
That's it, really?
Yeah. That's it. And I don't really want to buy it. I'm not really hell-bent on spending extra money on it.
Well, I mean, Obzedat's still really good.
It's just gotten me out of some tight situations, I guess, and it kills faster than Blood Baron does.
Yeah. I like that it's got a little built-in life gain into it, too, where you don't even have to hit them. I mean, Blood Baron, I don't know. Sometimes he just doesn't get the life gain you want from him.
I don't think I've ever really had a Blood Baron be a problem against me either. And maybe that's why I'm not, like, too broken up for not having it.
Yeah, I think Obzedat still plays really well. But it does feel like more of these decks, the Esper Controls are opting for the Blood Baron.
Yeah, definitely.
Alright, we can get back to your second round. So yeah, he beat the blue-white heroic 2-0.
And then I played Mono Blue Devotion in round 2 and lost 2-1. He beat me 2-1. It was a pretty good match, I guess. I didn't think I had that big of a problem with Mono Blue Devotion. I still really don't. It was just a bad draw, I think, in one of the games. I think one of the games I was missing out on double blue for like way too long to do dissolve or anything like that, so I couldn't stop anything, or double black, something, or there was, I think he was beating me down with a double pumped, what is the flyer?
Cloudfin Raptor?
Yeah, Cloudfin Raptor. And he kept playing other things that I wanted to kill, so I kept killing those things. And the Raptor just got in too many times and I got too low. So any creature would have killed me if I didn't have the removal for it. But I think it was still a winnable match. I just didn't draw the right cards.
I think you're actually favoring that match too. He has the gainsays. Now that's kind of the thing that, looking at your deck, it does hit like a lot of things. It hits your Wincon and Aetherling.
Well, and the reason I don't play gainsays myself out of the board is because no one in our meta except for this one person plays
the
Mono Blue Devotion. Yeah. So it's like I don't even feel compelled to bring in gainsay. I've had it in my board before, and it's been 4 dead cards or 3 dead cards in my board. You know?
Your favorite anyway, just because it's Supreme Verdict.
Yeah.
I mean, there's nothing he can do about the Supreme Verdict.
Mm-hmm.
And he's a deck that kind of needs to have multiple creatures out so he can get the devotion of his Stasa.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I mean, I feel like you're pretty favored in that match.
Yeah, I think so too.
But okay,
did not
you
win
lost
that
there,
one.
yeah.
Round 3, I played a green-blue fatty creature deck, and it was pretty cool. I tried building a deck that was kind of similar to it. Before, he had Garrick and Prime Speaker Zagana with Arbor Colossus and Holocronos, and he was playing Karametra's Acolyte, which is the devotion tap for green mana equal to your devotion to green.
Yep, 4 mana, 1/4.
Yeah, and he had other rampers like the Sylvan Caryatid and
Voyaging Satyr.
yeah, not Voyaging
Elvish
Satyr,
Mystic?
Elvish Mystic, yeah.
Okay.
And he got me in the second game, and it's a cool deck. It just, I don't know, I think again, I'm so heavy with removal that I can just remove everything at once, and especially when you're running ramper guys. This is why I always like rampant growth over mana dorks, because they don't die as like fallout to the mass removal that hits your big guy as well. But that seemed to be kind of the linchpin, I guess. So I don't know. It wasn't a tough match, I don't think, because you're relying on big fat creatures, and I can answer big fat creatures one at a time pretty easily too.
Yeah, I would say you have a particularly good match there too.
Mm-hmm.
Anytime people have to fuss around with ramp and creatures too,
Mm-hmm.
like, because then, I don't know, sometimes, especially with ramp creatures against a deck that runs main deck for Supreme Verdicts, it's like just not what you want to be doing.
Right.
So I think you have a great match there too.
And then in round 4, I played Junk Midrange, and I won 2-1. They were playing pretty standard stuff, Voice of Resurgence and Loxodon Smiter. I think he had Reaper of the Wilds in his deck. I can't remember if he had Desecration Demon or not, but he definitely had, I think, Blood Baron.
Abrupt Decays and stuff too.
Yeah, all the regular junk stuff that you play.
Okay.
And he got me in game 2 as well, but it can go either way, that matchup. If they have the Thought Seizes out of the board that hit the right stuff early, it can be a pretty uphill battle for me. You know, if they get rid of my removal before they bring out their Loxodon Smiter, that's like a 5-turn clock with if I have no answer for it, you know. So yeah, it just depends on how the draws go basically against Junk Midrange.
Okay.
And then I top 8'd, so I played red, white, black control in top 8 first round.
And this is a pretty popular archetype.
Mm-hmm.
It's like Reckoners and Desecration
Just
Demon,
all the good stuff.
Blood Baron,
Storm Breath Dragon he was running too.
Thought Seizes,
Yeah.
Devour
everything.
Flesh, Hero's Downfall. It is like
Mhm.
pretty much a collection of all the best removal and
Yeah, and
creatures.
Dreadbore too.
Yep.
So.
Just Dreadbore and Hero's Downfall. I mean, that is some good answers.
Yeah, like nothing that's out of his range.
But you beat it 2-0, so how did the match go down?
In the first round, it was a pretty back and forth battle, I think. And I just out-controlled him in the end, basically. I had the draw, and he didn't, you know. And then in our game 2, he didn't draw his second black to cast like a Hero's Downfall on my Jace or something like that. So he just got too far behind. He did slaughter games my Sphinx's Revelation though, on turn 4.
And hit one?
Well, I didn't have one in my hand, but he got them
okay.
all out of my deck, you know. Which was, it sucked, but I guess it wasn't that terrible because he's still a mid-range deck who wants to play 1 or 2 creatures at a time, and I can handle 1 or 2 creatures at a time better than I can handle like a big horde of early creatures, you know. So I was able to beat him because he was off his second mana in that or a second black for so long. I
Okay.
think he also had Desecration Demon he needed to play too, so.
Yeah, I guess I feel like you'd even have a good match there too, because like
Mm,
you said, you have the Sphinx's Revelation, so you get the long-term card
mm,
draw advantage as well as Jace
yeah,
getting the well, what's the ability
mini
called?
Factor Fiction.
I guess yeah, Factor Fiction essentially. I wanted to say Brainstorm, but I'm like, no, that's the good Jace.
Yeah.
Architect of Thought is still good,
Hmm.
and he's actually gone up in price with this new standard environment
Yeah.
as well. He's like 25 or again or 30
Hmm.
even. So yeah, I mean, you have the card advantage. I feel like him just needing the answers is going to be more difficult for him.
Yeah.
Plus, I mean, I've watched him play for a while, and I kind of see that he gets flooded
Hmm.
fairly often. He says he loses a lot of games to flood,
Hmm.
but you need to have obviously a big mana base because you're running 3 color.
Right.
So I think he's probably running 25 or 26, something crazy like that.
Hmm.
He also has Read the Bones, so he does have,
Oh, he does have some draw. He just didn't see any against me, so.
there is a little bit of card draw. But I feel like yours is just vastly
Hmm.
superior. Sphinx's Revelation late game is just so debilitating,
Mm.
and you're running 4 of them. So,
Yeah.
I mean, do you ever get clumped up with Sphinx's
Yeah, I
Revelations?
do, and it sucks. And I originally had 3 in my deck, but then I saw a list with 4, so I was like, well,
No, it's probably a good idea, but I mean, just a lot of times maybe
yeah.
you're casting it for
I
5
think
and
I
getting
think I'm
2.
just supposed to start casting it at 2, or X is 2. I had been playing it a little more conservatively, like I'll wait until I can get some real life and real draw off this, but now I'm seeing that with 4 I can just easily throw the first one away on 2.
Hmm. Yes. I like the list though, and it obviously did well for you splitting in top 4.
Hmm.
All right, I'm going to go through my FNM. I'm still running Boros Aggro. Pretty similar to what I have online. I think there might be a couple sideboard differences between online and the deck I'm running in real life. But it's 4 Cacklers, 4 Rakdos Cackler, 4 Fire Crusader, 4 Burning Tree Emissary, 4 Fist Striker, 4 Chainwalker, 4 Phoenix, 4 Shock, 4 Lightning Strike, Chain to the Rocks, 2 Boros Charm, 4 Temple of Triumph, 4 Sacred Foundry, 4 Mutavaults, and 10 Mountains. So obviously just a modified red deck wins essentially. Uh, it's it's kind of like almost like mono white aggro, but the red version of it, because both decks kind of get value from like Boros Charms, is why the mono white one was splashing red, and I'm really splashing white for the Chain to the Rocks, but I like getting the Boros Charms main
Hmm.
deck as well. So it's a good deck. It's very consistent. If you've been watching the videos that I've posted online so far, I guess I lost one round 1 and then I won one. But it keeps up with the big decks. The Chain of the Rocks can really answer the Master of Waves, so Mono Blue Devotion, which is really popular. At least I've got 4 of Answer main deck to the big threat.
Hmm.
I still like being able to take out Smiters, Voices of Resurgence, like Desecration Demons.
Yeah. Without
Even
actually having to kill them with damage or something or
Yeah,
send them to the
even Night Veil
graveyard.
Spectre. Like I'm just not sold on that mono red 1-drop aggro one, the Foundry Street Denizen sort of deck. I feel
Hmm.
like it's a good idea, and I'm sure sometimes you can get some nutty hands fairly consistently, but I think it's just too weak,
Hmm.
it's too vulnerable. Whereas I feel like you've got some options with this deck. You can you can get a mediocre hand and still get there because you have the answers to threats you need to answer.
Hmm.
So I like it. It's been working pretty well for me. I've been top 8ing a lot, and Friday was no exception. So my round 1 opponent was the blue-green fatty deck that Jake played against as well. And I just had some really nutty hands both games. I remember game 1 getting a turn 2 double emissary Gorehouse Chainwalker, and I think I even had a 1-drop too. Maybe I didn't, but even if I didn't, I was so far ahead at that point on turn 2
Yeah.
that
Battalion you can't block.
yeah, and then clean up with a couple pieces of spot removal and just start getting in, and then probably Fire Fist Striker. I think in game 2 cleaned up there. So I think it was, even though he was ramping into fatties, the Fire Fist Striker and the Chain of the Rocks just make it not that big of a deal.
Hmm.
So I took that out 2-0. Round 2 I played against a red-green sort of aggro-y mid-range deck, and it was stuff like Xenagos, And I'm trying to think of all the different threats he had there. He had Polykranos, he had Nylea, Burning Tree Emissaries.
Hmm.
So I think it was almost like mono green, but like I said, he did have the Xenagos in there, and it was interesting seeing Nylea too. But uh, he still had some mid-range cards too, like the Hydra, Colonian Hydra,
Yeah.
which I haven't seen pop up in a while,
Hmm.
and then rampy guys like Elvish Mystic and Sylvan Caryatid. So it was a cool deck. Uh, I beat it 2-0, and I think I just once again it was like I think I mulled game one, but I got a really solid six keep and was able to just sort of to trample it down. I think he had to mull as well, so it was one of those double mulls.
Hmm.
And I was on the play. I remember that. I was on the play for my first 3 rounds, which I think we mentioned last week. It seems to help aggro even
Yeah.
more, than it helps
Yeah.
control. Like it does help control sort of solidify a position, a foundation early to protect themselves. But for aggro, sometimes it can get overwhelming too fast, especially with multiple emissaries on
Yeah.
turn two. So in this case, I just remember it being fairly close, but the Chain of the Rocks came up huge again. So dealing with fatty creatures in mid-range decks is not as big a deal as I think it usually would be for like a
Hmm.
mono red. Round three, I played against mono white aggro, and I lost to that 1-2. And I mean, it was a different mono white. It was more of a aggro mid deck. It wasn't the traditional all the one drops and the Spear of Heliod, that sort of consistency one. It was more of like it was running Spear of Heliod, but it had a Johnny's, and it was running Heliod the God.
Mm.
So it almost seemed a little mid-rangey in that respect, but it still had a lot of the aggro-y beginning, like the Soldier of the Pantheon and the Precinct Captain. So it was like different in that, no imposing sovereigns. And what are some of the other like creatures? I think he was still running Dryad's Militant, but I didn't see any Judges Familiars.
Oh,
Um,
I'm trying to think. Yeah, Judge's Familiar is really important, I would feel like.
maybe he
Still.
did have. Actually, maybe he did have Judges Familiar. I feel like I didn't see it though. Maybe he did. It
Imposing
seemed,
Sovereign is the one I can see leaving in or taking out,
yeah,
actually. Anyway.
yeah. I mean, I was surprised to see Heliod, but giving all vigilance can be relevant in some matchups
And as a 5/6 for 4, indestructible.
if you have the devotion. Yeah,
Which
and I
you
mean
most likely do if you have all those one drops.
precinct captains and the one drops, and even a Johnny, which is nice for double devotion.
Yeah.
So I did lose to that. I was having some real problems. I had a game where I opened a double Temple of Triumph hand, and it had 2 Chain of the Rocks in it, and I thought for sure I'd be able to find a mountain because I run 10 mountains and 4 Sacred Foundries, so really 14 lands that I can enchant with Chain of the Rocks, but I actually went the whole game without seeing a mountain, so it was crazy. I had a really good hand beyond that. I just couldn't use my removal when I needed to. Electrickery comes in that match out of sideboard, and it's very useful there.
Definitely.
Even in that match that slightly had some more mid-rangey stuff, it's still excellent to play against that. But I did lose to that. So then round four, I played against a green-white aggro mid deck, and was like Voice of Resurgence, Loxodon Smiter, Advent of the Worm, and Selesnya Charm, which is kind of an overlooked one right now. It seems like. I mean, it's played when people are on color with it. Not all the time, though. I don't know. I like it because it's a god killer.
Yeah,
but
it's really good for that.
It's just interesting that there's not a ton of gods being played right now. You've got Thassa in mono blue, so it's obviously good there. But even Erebus is like a one of, maybe.
Yeah, in mono black.
So it's not even that big of a deal there. But even +2/+2 and trample and getting the creature, they're all useful.
But Desecration Demon sees a lot of play too,
Taking that out is nice. I could see that.
Even getting Obsidat.
Yeah, hitting Obsidat's huge. So I do like that. And it was doing Selesnya Charm. I was able to just bring in Pacifisms out of the sideboard, Active Treason, and Mizium Mortars. So I had a lot of good sideboard options for mid-range creatures. I am well geared for mid-range. I feel like though that's fairly popular. The mono black devotion and the mono blue devotion aren't exactly mid-range, but I feel like they don't really start taking off until like turn, 3, 4, 5, somewhere around there. Even slower in the case of mono black. I guess mono black is more of a mid-range deck, I would
Yeah,
say.
it's very mid-range, I think.
Yep. And that one is probably problematic against me. It's not, like you said, it's not that played that much in our meta. It is played though,
Hmm.
and the one we have is more of it's like black-white. It utilizes Merciless Eviction, High
It's mono
Priesthood
black
Penance, and even
with white
Elspeth.
splash, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Wait, uses High Priest, did you say?
Out of sideboard
Oh,
for the
okay.
aggro matches.
Yeah, I suppose that's pretty good. High Priest is interesting because it is destroy target permanent.
Mm-hmm.
So you can block something and trade and kill their bigger guy.
Or even kill a Mutavault.
Hmm.
That would be useful.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I mean, it's good against me.
Hmm.
I can Fire Fist Striker past it, though, so it's something they have to be conscious of. But, yeah, I mean, maybe it's a swap for the Pack Rat in that match, because I can't really burn it, right? I can really only, like, Fire Fist Striker past it.
Yeah.
But usually it just 1-for-1s and blocks something, but, sometimes that can be useful enough to get there.
Yeah.
You'd also think because they run Underworld Connections that would help me almost, like paying 3 mana to enchant a land, tap out, and something like that, or even turn 4, tapping out essentially to draw a card and lose a life. I feel like would seem bad against me, but they do have quite a bit of life gain. I mean, the Gray Merchants
alone
just bring it back so fast, and then like you said, the whip. But I mean that's a difficult matchup. They run a lot of removal, and as well as they do the Night Veils and Desecration Demons too, right? They do demons for sure.
Yeah.
So they have the Devour Flesh for themselves in a pinch.
Yeah.
If they need to gain, a bunch of life, and maybe you've been sacking stuff to Desecration Demon, so he's even bigger. I'm just saying, they have a lot of spot removal. They have good mid-rangey stuff. I need to answer Night Veil Specters a lot of the time because the Specters block my Phoenixes all day.
Right.
And I don't want to get hit by them and randomly have them be able to cast a Rakdos Cackler, which has happened against me.
Yeah.
With Night Veil Spectre. It's like the one card they can cast right off the top.
Otherwise, they need to get a mountain or something.
So, yeah. Anyway, I guess back to the green-white aggro match that I did in round 4. The game you beat me, it was pretty bad news. Advent to the Worm is actually still a huge deal against us, because Chain to the Rocks, though it is an answer, they get the surprise factor of a block, even on a Fire Fist Striker, which is probably where it's most relevant.
Right.
So Advent of the Worm is very good. It was also the way that it made it a little more mid. I remember seeing Armada Worm as like a 1 or 2 of main deck at least, and that
cool.
Maybe is a little bit too slow for me though.
Yeah. I like Armada Worm though a lot.
He brought in the 4 Unflinching Courage out of the sideboard, but just didn't see him. But like I said, I really like having access to the Pacifisms, the Mizium Mortars, and the Chain to the Rocks at that point. You just are loaded with solid removal for their mid-rangey threats. And so I feel comfortable in that matchup. I would like to do some more mono-black testing. I think both of us should, really. So, yeah, because I think it's more prevalent. It's very prevalent in the current overall meta, just not in our meta so much. Yeah, it seems like the popular archetypes are more of just like a small minority of art in general.
Yeah,
the mono blue devotion, even the Esper control, the mono black.
Yeah.
They're all present, but they represent a really small piece of the pie.
One of us basically plays them.
Yep. I mean, if we were to sort of label our meta or define our meta, I would have to say it's a lot of mid-rangey sort of fat creature decks. Doesn't it seem like that? It seems like you're mostly looking at win cons of Desecration Demons, Smiters, what are some more, like Boon Satyrs even, and some of those green-red monstery decks. I haven't seen any Ember Swallowers. He sort of like fell off the radar.
Yeah, sadly.
I mean, maybe not. Because I did play against green-red, and he for sure was not running Ember Swallowers. Much more of like the mono-green thing going on for Nylea. But yeah, I mean, those are more the threats you're seeing in our meta. So, I think the reason that's important is you have to keep in mind like why our sideboard choices, are important for our meta.
Yeah.
And how maybe they should be different if you're going to like a big tournament where you should expect to see tons of mono black Devotion, Mono Blue Devotion,
Yeah, like
Esper
what
Control.
there was
Jake's
one
running a
where,
good archetype deck for an overall meta, I would say, because you're going to see that
Yeah.
everywhere. There's always going to be control players, and it happens that Esper Control is very good right
Mhm.
now.
It's true. I really like it. I think it is very strong.
Okay, well, that was our F&M report. Now we're going to go to Weird Harvest for this week. Weird Harvest. Weird Harvest, everybody. So this is a segment where we pick a card, and then we... Oh, that's not it. Pick a card, and we talk about it, say what's weird about the name of it, what's weird about the picture with it, and then we briefly go over the actual text of the card. Old text and Oracle text. So this week, Frankenstein's Monster. Already with the name, pretty obvious choice why it belongs in this category of card. Frankenstein's Monster is originally, or only in the dark, and it seems like it's very similar to Sutured Ghoul. But it is 2 black and X. So, originally it was Summon Monster, now it's been errated to a zombie. And it's 2 black and X, and let's read the old text first. So it's, when Frankenstein's Monster is brought into play, if you do not take X creatures from your graveyard and remove them from the game, Frankenstein's Monster is countered. For each creature removed from your graveyard in this way, you may choose to give Frankenstein's Monster a permanent +2/+0, +1/+1, or +0/+2. Alright, so the errated text. As it enters the battlefield, exile X creature cards from your graveyard. If you can't, put them into its owner's graveyard instead of onto the battlefield. For each creature exiled this way, Frankenstein's Monster enters the battlefield with +2/+0, +1/+1, or a +0/+2 counter on it. So Jake, maybe you want to go over why this card is so antiquated and what that actually means, because maybe people aren't used to seeing +2/+0, +0/+2 counters.
They shouldn't be, because they don't do it anymore. They've decided that +1/+1 and -1/-1 are like the go-to power and toughness adjuster counters that they're going to use. So they'll never do the +2/+1 or +2/+0 or even +2/+2 counters anymore. They do 2 +1/+1 counters now. So the other thing that's weird about it is that you have 3 different choices of counters to get on this creature as you put it out. So it already is
Convoluted,
Yeah.
to say the least.
like even the way it's written doesn't make it easier. You still have to set its power and toughness. So you would have to use dice to signify probably just its power and toughness is what they really wanted you to do instead of doing counters, because they don't mention counters. They just say it gets a permanent +2/+0 instead of the until end of turn +1/+0 like Fire Breathing or Blessing.
Yeah, it's actually amazing how poorly done that was in retrospect. You'd think they would have play tested that and seen that, wait a second, I have to have 3 different types of counters on here. But maybe you're probably right. It wasn't even maybe they weren't even placing counters on it.
No, I think if they were doing anything, they were saying this is a 2 blank or a 4 blank, like just signifying it like that, the way that you did Shapeshifter.
That's true, and especially since this doesn't even mention anything about counters in the original text. There's no mention of counters.
But to correct it, they needed to add them. The other thing that is interesting about it is that it's countered as it's brought into play, which is totally not how you counter something. Like, you can only counter a spell, except that if it's brought into play, it's no longer a spell, but it can still be countered if you don't remove the creatures. So
they definitely changed that too.
Yeah.
So they needed to make sure it didn't say countered.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe we should talk about the art now, because that's sort of an interesting aspect. Is this what you'd imagine Frankenstein's monster to look like?
I think it's a good representation of it. I like it.
What's funny about this card is, another thing that's antiquated about it is, obviously it's relating to a story,
a real
world story, and now they've definitely moved away from that. Theros is a total example, since it's literally just taking Grecian ancient history,
And
and
Innistrad is an example of it too, just doing
and
Gothic horror.
swapping the name but using essentially all the same characters and lore.
Yep.
So it's very odd that they're just reached a point where it was like, okay, if we want to use, they must have just figured that it's like we're gonna run out of Earth lore, so we need to have a way to use Earth lore, but add our own elements or be able to change it however we need to
Right.
make our set work.
Mm-hmm.
So there did come a point, but if you didn't know, original Magic always was stealing Earth lore and names and
a lot of them.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, a lot of the creatures they're not totally made up. They're based on fantasy creatures and typical fantasy creatures at that, like dragons, zombies, elves, goblins, everything that you would expect in fantasy world. Orcs originally, So I don't know. I guess that all I'm saying is they didn't start to develop their own creature types until later on either.
Yeah, that's true. They just used all the traditional ones. A lot of Tolkien influence ones, I'm sure.
Exactly.
So the picture in Frankenstein's monster is, it's not the Frankenstein's monster that you'd expect to see. Obviously, the one everyone thinks of is the one with the bolts in the neck and the scar on the head and the flat top head or whatever. This looks much more like it's got long hair. It's very muscly looking. Very. All you see is its flesh, and it's very sutured, like you'd expect Frankenstein to be, but it doesn't have that sort of gray pallor to it.
No, but I like the metal implements on it too, like on its skull.
Yeah, what is that exactly? You think it means it was like it's almost like it was that's where it was
revived, yeah.
That's where it was hooked up, and that's where it was getting the electricity to the brain. So Anson Maddox, the illustrator,
he did some good creepy work. Sometimes I think he also did like Ritual of the Machine and other stuff like that. So
is he do anything recent, or is he not really?
No, I think he was an early artist that they eventually cut when they started to
do more realistic pictures. I see. I do like the art. I actually think the art's something that we can't really make fun of too much, but the name of the card is just absolutely ridiculous. Frankenstein's monster. I will note. I think it's funny, and I mentioned to you this the other day that they didn't screw it up and call it Frankenstein, because that's actually a common misconception that the actual monster is named Frankenstein, where the doctor is named Frankenstein.
And it really is his monster.
So they did it right, flavorfully, but it's so antiquated now, twofold, since the name is Earthlore, which they won't do anymore, and the counters on it are just
the counters are really bad.
And I guess that's actually just how the game grew, being a mistake of it, because I feel like at this time, weren't they inconsistent too? Weren't there some things that would literally say, put a counter on it, and then there would be some like this that just say, give it a permanent boost?
Well, I think so. I mean, this one, it really wants you to just set its power and toughness.
With like a dice, yeah.
Yeah. And I really think, honestly, they played it similarly to Shapeshifter, where, okay, I have a total number of this, like X is this, so I can do either this, or this, like these are the different ones I can do. But it really didn't pan out. It really shouldn't have had one toughness. I think that is actually a really big mistake on this card. But I suppose they want you to be able to play it for just 2 black.
And then, yeah.
As a 0/1.
But if you don't take the creatures, then it's put in the graveyard instead.
Yeah, X is 0 though, so just take 0 creatures from the graveyard.
Oh, I see.
But I really think that if it was a 0/0, it would have been better, because it would have been much easier to add those counters up.
Yeah, so I guess this card potentially can be played as a blocker in a pinch, or really bad blocker. But that's like a luxury that Sutured Ghoul didn't have, because it costs 7 mana.
Right.
Overall, I mean, it's funny in retrospect, this card, the counter system, I'm really glad they worked that out. You actually mentioned something that gave +2/+2 counters at one point. What's an example of a card that did that?
I
Did
think
they do that?
Dwarven Armory does it, but maybe I'm wrong about that. Could be +1/+1 counters.
No, it's +2/+2 counter, and they still do it. Wow.
Yep.
So
and I think actually Baron Singer gets a +2/+2 counter too.
yeah, that sounds right.
The reason that they didn't go back on this, and I think that they had changed it at one time or wanted to change it, but they said that they wouldn't, is because for proliferate it actually matters, you know.
Mm-hmm. So they're gonna let you keep the value with proliferate.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Interesting. Now, is there +3/+3 counters, or did they stop it at +2/+2?
I feel like +2/+2 was like the ultimate, but I do think that there was something with +2/+1. I just can't think of it.
God, that sounds obnoxious
Yeah,
too.
it had to have been a Fallen Empire's block one. It was probably Armor Thrall, and I think it's +1/+2.
Oh yeah, that sounds. Our armory throw?
No,
Or
just Armor Thrall.
okay. Yeah, you're right. +1/+2 counter. Jeez. Yeah. So they did make the right choice moving away from this. You really just have to have one or the other. And actually, did they always have the same way with the +1/+1s and the -1/-1 interactions? Is that an early rule too?
No, so they stayed.
Both
Each one
stayed.
stayed. Yeah.
Now they just, cancel each other out,
Yeah.
which is much smarter.
Right. Yeah. It's like, just get rid of those counters. They're not doing anything anyway,
Mm-hmm.
other than adding confusion.
So you do think in the beginning that they would have to have both their -1/-1s and their +1/+1s?
Well, that was how the rules worked at a tournament. Like, I think that people probably,
just did it
yeah.
naturally.
Mm-hmm.
That's a good point. They probably did. So I guess we don't have too much more comments to say about Frankenstein's monster this week. It's a very strange card, only because I've never seen something that gives you such odd choices like that before. And it's almost like, what do you feel like you'd be doing most of the time? You know?
Mm-hmm.
I feel like the toughness boost one you do the least.
Unless you, yeah. I mean, the whole thing of it is,
It was supposed to be
with
versatile,
two creatures, you could get +2/+2 anyway, which is what you would do if you got +2/+0 and +0/+2. So really, it should have always just been +1/+1 counters for each one.
and maybe if you had 5 creatures, so for what, 7 mana, you could get a 10/1 or something.
Yeah, I think what they're, yeah, I mean,
It's not like it's that efficient.
no, and it's not even. I would beg to say, or like, I would say it's not even good.
No, it's not very good, but you'll still find some casual players playing it because it's fun.
It's cool. It is cool. And I do like that you can go that way with it, like make it a 0/11, and just be like
huge Frankenstein's monster wall. And I guess flavorfully it does make sense, not only with the name, but the actual what you're doing. You're stealing parts from creatures, and you're using the parts in different ways to boost it.
You can build it exactly the way you want to make it, which would be either powerful on the attack or powerful on defense.
So, yes, that is kind of funny.
But it's funny that you can't make it an even number, can you?
No, there is no way to make it an even number, is there? Because you're always going to have the one extra
You're
toughness.
always going up either equally on, like, +1/+1, or, equally either way on the other two.
Maybe the justification was you're starting with something that's a creature, which is why that it has the 1 toughness. Because you're actually starting with, like, some form of meat.
A chest.
So you have something. So flavorfully, good.
Yeah, I actually think they did what they were intending to do. The problem is the playtest name didn't change from when they printed it on the card.
Do you think his colors are right?
Black, yeah.
Only because he's a zombie? He's got a little bit of good in him, right?
Good?
I thought the actual.
You think that he should have like white in him?
Because wasn't that the actual? I thought the Frankenstein's monster wasn't an actual monster, was it?
No, the people were, right? Like it was supposed to. The movie version showed it as the people were the monster, but Frankenstein himself was the monster, right? As far as like
behaviorally, morally, yeah. Maybe we're delving too deep here on the flavor aspect of it.
I don't think that the monster itself should be anything but black. It is just a zombie.
I can get on board with that. I like the picture. Anson Maddox did a good job. Do you know if that robotics thing in the background?
I think it's just the apparatus to capture storm energy.
Okay, so for some reason it makes me think of like Ashnod's transmogrand or something, but I guess I'd almost like to compare this art to the movie, like what the cinematography in the movie. I'd almost want to see if this is consistent with images from that, you know what I mean? But I'll have to get back on
I
that.
really like Ashnod's transmogrant art.
Yeah, we can look at that real quick. Yeah, it's almost like a, I don't know,
Fleshless clay man.
very warped face. Creepy. And this is like pre-equipment sort of stuff. That one says counter, right?
Yeah.
And then you have to permanently...
But that's the 5th edition version. Maybe you want to look at the Antiquities version.
Gains, yeah. So the original did not mention counters either. So that was something they just added and then had to errata to a bunch of cards that where it became weird.
Yeah.
Weird. Perfect way to end it. Okay. Well, I hope you enjoyed this week. We're going to be back next week with some more F&M reports, and we'll see if anything's changed in the meta in the meantime. But yeah, please go to seemsgoodmagic.com, check out the draft videos, still posting on a fairly regular basis, and go to twitch.tv/Inez27 if you want to check out the streams that I do during the week. Okay, well, that's it. I'll see you guys later.
Later.